February of 2022. So this was when the capital raise was announced. A capital raise featuring new investors and existing WNBA and NBA owners brought in $75 million that was used to supercharge the WNBA's business growth, including better marketing and more innovation. And this is when we talk about the split, you guys, and why it's very hard for players to get more of a revenue share than what they're asking for. 42% of the WNBA is owned by the WNBA, 42%.
In February 2022, the WNBA sold a 16% equity stake to an investor group for $75 million. At the time, it looked like a lifeline. The league needed capital for growth, stronger marketing, and real innovation. Fast forward to today, and that decision now sits at the heart of the biggest negotiation crisis in women's basketball history. Here's what no one was considering back then. What happens when the league's value suddenly skyrockets? What happens when a $2.2 billion media rights deal appears on the table? That same 16% stake that seemed like a smart move in 2022 has become the very reason players are unable to secure the revenue split they're demanding.
By this investor group. Now, looking back at it, you guys, the WNBA was not doing well in 2022. So this might not have been a bad decision. This might have been a decision that they felt like they needed to make in order to continue the league, in order for the league not to fold, in order for, like they said here, to supercharge the business growth, to include better marketing and more innovation. And I've actually spoken to people who are much deeper in the WNBA circle than I am. And a lot of people, they say that Kathy has done a lot of things that have actually saved the W.
The math is brutal. The WNBA owns 42% of itself. The NBA owns another 42%, and the investor group controls the remaining 16%. So when players ask for a 50-50 revenue split, like the NBA has, they aren't just negotiating with the league. They're negotiating with outside investors who have zero incentive to hand over profits to athletes they don't represent. This is the structural problem nobody wants to talk about. You can blame Cathy Engelbert all you want, but she was managing a league that had been losing money for years. The 2020 bubble season exposed just how underfunded everything truly was. Players staying in subpar hotels, complaining about food quality, while NBA players received the full Disney World treatment. The optics were terrible. The reality was even worse. The league simply didn't have the money to do better.
Their first WNBA championship, the Las Vegas Aces unveiled a 64,000 square foot practice facility and headquarters in Henderson, Nevada. That's actually crazy if they were the first ones to kickstart this facilities in just 2023. And that's what I'm trying to paint this picture, you guys. The league has come so far since 2020. Since 2020 that they said it themselves, it was a groundbreaking CBA. They were still in the trenches. I'm sorry. A groundbreaking CBA. They were still in the trenches. They didn't really have practice facilities. They were sometimes practicing at
And then came the prioritization rule, January 2020, part of that groundbreaking CBA that had players celebrating at the time. The rule was simple. If you play in the WNBA comes first. No more skipping training camp because your overseas team made the playoffs. No more choosing Spain over Seattle just because the money was better abroad. Players agreed to this because the alternative was far worse. Rookie contracts paid only around $70,000 a year, and Diana Taurasi had literally been paid $1 million by a Russian team to skip an entire WNBA season. That's how unbalanced the economics were. Overseas teams could outbid the league for its own players. But here's where it gets complicated. Prioritization was supposed to be temporary, a bridge until WNBA salaries caught up. Now, 5 years later, salaries have barely doubled, and new leagues like Unrivaled are offering $100,000 for just 8 weeks of work. Players are starting to ask, why are we prioritizing a league that still can't pay us what we're truly worth?
Bigger and that much brighter on the WNBA, and I'm really glad that she mentions it here. It's just Caitlin Clark. It's always been just Caitlin Clark. Yes, there are other great young players who have come into this league, but it has truly been the Caitlin Clark effect. Even if you look at the viewership for Iowa this year, the viewership for Iowa in the past couple years, even after Caitlin Clark departed, there are still people that are tuned into Iowa when Iowa was never at the top of the viewership numbers. It's because of Caitlin Clark. When she came into the league, the Indiana Fever were
April 2024 changed everything. Caitlin Clark was drafted, and suddenly the WNBA wasn't just growing, it was exploding. Attendance records were shattered, and viewership numbers hit levels not seen in 25 years. The Indiana Fever jumped from third to last in attendance to number 1 overnight. Literally overnight, not gradually. This is where the players' frustration became entirely legitimate. They opted out of the CBA in October 2024 because they could see what was coming, a media rights deal worth $2 billion per year for 11 years. They knew that if they didn't act quickly, they'd be locked into another contract paying only a fraction of the league's actual value.
Its rise in popularity, other college stars such as fellow 2024 draftee Angel Reese and more recently 2025 #1 pick Paige Bueckers also brought significant followings to the WNBA. And I will agree, they brought significant followings, but some of those followings haven't translated to viewership and attendance. And we've kind of also seen that in Unrivaled. And I'm not saying that all of the viewership woes in Unrivaled are because people aren't following Paige Bueckers. Like, I don't think the product is that great either. But we've even seen when Caitlin Clark goes golfing, that's higher viewership than.
But here's the reality check nobody wants to hear. That $2.2 billion media deal isn't profit, it's revenue. The league still faces massive expenses. Charter flights for every team, which weren't even a thing 2 years ago. New practice facilities being built across the league. The Aces opened a 64,000 square foot headquarters in 2023. The Fever are constructing a $100 million facility, and the Wings were supposed to break ground on theirs. But that has now been delayed until 2027. All of it costs money, real money, that has to come from somewhere before players see their cut, and this is where the negotiation gets stuck. Players are asking for 50% of revenue, while owners are offering something closer to 30%. The gap isn't simply about greed, it's about fundamental disagreements over what's sustainable.
Straight up when Caitlin Clark got into the league, and it's like, I'm tired of talking about this. You guys have heard it from me so many times. We should be able to stop talking about this. But when there's still people who just deny reality, it is kind of strange. So in July 2024, the WNBA secures monumental media deal. The WNBA agreed to an 11-year media rights deal valued at $2.2 billion or $200 million per year with Disney, Amazon Prime, and NBC Universal. Then in October 2024, players opt out of previous CBA. January 2025, Unrivaled launches, and we talked about Unrivaled more yesterday.
Then came the All-Star Game, February 2025. Players wore shirts during warm-ups that read, "Pay us what you owe us." The message was clear, but the execution left much to be desired. They went on to play one of the worst All-Star games in recent memory. Low effort, no dunks, barely any defense. Fans paid to see the best players in the world and got a glorified scrimmage instead. Compare that to the 2024 All-Star Game, which was genuinely competitive and exciting. The contrast was stark, giving critics an easy argument. If you want to be paid like professionals, you need to play like professionals. Even in exhibition games, especially in exhibition games, when the goal is to grow the fan base beyond the diehards.
This was crazy, you guys, and we covered it. We were covering it daily because this was right before the WNBA finals. And if you remember, Nafisa Collier also got injured by Alyssa Thomas, and the Minnesota Lynx did not end up going to the finals. And I do always wonder, like, if they would have gone to the finals, I don't think Nafisa would have done this thing with Kathy. Like, I think she would have waited until after the WNBA finals, but it definitely took the spotlight off of the finals, which the finals were also trash. Like, the Aces swept Phoenix. There were more injuries, like Satu Sabli had that really.
September 2025 brought the Nafisa Collier situation right before the WNBA finals. She went public with her frustrations about Kathy Engelbert, and the timing was deliberate. She knew it would dominate the news cycle, and it did. But it also drew attention away from the finals themselves, which ended in a disappointing sweep by the Aces over Phoenix. Here's what's particularly interesting about that moment. Collier's team, the Minnesota Lynx, had just been eliminated. If they had made the finals, Would she have spoken out? Probably not. This suggests it wasn't just about principles, it was strategic. Use the platform when you have it, even if it overshadows the basketball itself. And that's become the pattern. Discussion around the WNBA is increasingly focused on everything except what's happening on the court. CBA negotiations, media rights deals, ownership structures, social activism. All important topics. But none of it matters if casual fans tune in and see a dull game.
The league forever. So you're going to have to enjoy the product that is on the court. And that should be the main focus, I feel like, for everyone. And if there's a great product, you will get paid more. The fans will come. The fans will want to watch. You will get the casual fans. You will get the NBA fans. You will get the male fans, which honestly, most sports fans are men. Like it or not, more men watch WNBA than women do. So it's like, in order to get the male sports fans from these other sports, you have to put out a good product. So I feel like that should always.
Which brings us to the fundamental tension. Right now, the WNBA has leverage because of Caitlin Clark, not because of the collective, but because of one player who brought millions of eyeballs to the league. Iowa's viewership stayed high even after she left. The Fever became the most-watched team in the league. When she goes golfing, it gets higher ratings than some unrivaled games. That's not opinion, it's measurable data, and it creates an awkward reality. Players are negotiating as a collective, demanding a revenue split based on the league's total value, but that value is disproportionately driven by one person. Angel Reed joined a Chicago Sky team already top 3 in attendance and dropped to bottom 5. Paige Buckers has a huge following, but it hasn't translated to unrivaled viewership the way people expected. The rising tide didn't lift all boats equally. It lifted Caitlin Clark's boat, and everyone else is trying to stay afloat in her wake. So, where are we now? 3 months after Kier's exit interview, nothing has changed at the league level. The WNBA and the Players' Union are still negotiating the CBA, still at an impasse, still fighting over the same fundamental questions. Can the league afford a 50-50 revenue split when 16% is owned by outside investors who won't agree? Can players demand NBA-level salaries when the product still isn't consistently delivering NBA-level entertainment? Can the league sustain charter flights and $100 million facilities while also doubling player salaries? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the actual math problem both sides are trying to solve. IT gets even more complicated. Players have more leverage than ever, but that leverage has an expiration date. Caitlin Clark's rookie contract runs 4 years. If the league doesn't capitalize on this moment, if it doesn't lock in sustainable economics while the spotlight is brightest, another opportunity like this might not come for a decade. Players want to maximize their earnings while leverage is high. Owners want to protect themselves against a future where the money dries up. Both positions are rational. Both are self-interested. And that's why they're stuck. Think back to the 2020 bubble season. Players stayed in mediocre hotels, ate subpar food, and played in empty gyms with piped-in crowd noise. The contrast to the NBA bubble was embarrassing, and Kathy Engelbert took the blame, but the WNBA simply didn't have the money to do better. The league had been subsidized by the NBA for decades. The 2022 capital raise was meant to break that dependency, bring in outside investment, and build something self-sustaining. Did it work?
Partially.
The league got the resources to improve conditions, but it also gave up equity that now complicates revenue sharing. Was it worth it? Time will tell. What's clear is that players are running out of patience. They see the media rights deal, sold-out arenas, Caitlin Clark jerseys outselling everyone in the NBA except LeBron James, and they're asking, where's our cut? The answer is complicated. The money is real, but so are the expenses. The leverage is real, but so is the risk. The future looks bright, but it's not guaranteed. Where does this end? Most likely somewhere in the middle. Players won't get 50-50ths, but they'll get more than 30%. Owners won't maintain total control, but they'll protect themselves against worst-case scenarios. The CBA will get signed. Everyone will claim victory. And in 6 years, we might be right back here having the same argument, unless something fundamental changes, unless the league finds a way to generate revenue that doesn't depend on one player, unless the product on the court becomes consistently excellent, not just occasionally exciting. Unless the fan base grows beyond diehards and Caitlin Clark fans and becomes truly sustainable, that's the real question. Not whether players deserve more money. They do. Not whether owners are being greedy. Some are, some aren't. The real question is whether the WNBA can build something that lasts, that survives the retirement of its biggest star, that justifies the investments being made right now. Because if they get this wrong, a CBA that looks great today could fall apart in 3 years. The consequences wouldn't just be financial, they'd be existential. The league has momentum. Squander it, and it might not return. So, what do you think? Are the players asking for too much? Too soon? Or are the owners failing to recognize the league's actual value? Should the WNBA prioritize sustainability over immediate player earnings? Or is this the moment to go all in while the spotlight is brightest? Drop your take in the comments. Hit that subscribe button. Let's keep this conversation going, because this negotiation isn't just about money, it's about the future of women's basketball.